I'd never seen The Godfather, or a host of other classic movies considered in the all-time great movie discussion. So last year I made a concerted effort and watched 210 movies that I hadn't seen before, in an effort to figure out what the best movie of all time actually is. To be fair, I've watched a lot of good movies before. In fact, here is my top 20 coming into last year. But anyway, without further ado, here are my top 50 movies that I saw last year. Lost in Translation is the sort of movie I would have written off before even watching it before last year. Instead, I gave it a go, and it's one of the most visually stunning films of all time. The oppressive loneliness as the characters struggle to find a sense of purpose in their lives, as well as trying to find a connection to both each other and the world around them in the foreign country of Japan, is just amazing to see unfold. Charlie Kaufman was recommended to me by one of my mates, and he's probably my new favourite writer. This, I think, is his tightest work that I've seen, and probably the funniest film I've ever watched as well. While it's maybe not as profound as something like Synecdoche, this, as always, feels very personally written, and I love it. It had me literally belly laughing from the opening frames all the way to the end. If there's ever been a movie I'm glad I saw it at the cinemas, it's probably Dune Part 2. The score and the cinematography were just insane and deserve to be seen on the big screen. The story itself is obviously on such an epic scale, and Villeneuve did an amazing job to make it feel appropriately momentous. Even more impressive, I think, given how sick the first movie was in and of itself, and then to elevate it to this was just incredible. I don't want to discuss Moonlight in too much depth here because I want to dissect it more in a later video, but suffice to say, anyone who writes it off as just a gay story or a black story is being incredibly reductive. While that is true in part, it is so much more than that. I love Martin McDonagh, and in Bruges certainly lived up to the hype. The humour was always going to land for me given his other work that I'd seen.
If I'd grown up on a farm and was retarded, Bruges might impress me, but I didn't, so it doesn't.
But to just call it a comedy is, again, really reductive. The consideration of the afterlife and what we do to get there was beautifully put together. Blade Runner 2049 is maybe the most mesmerising film I've ever seen, Roger Deakins is at his absolute best, which really is saying something. I also wouldn't be the first to say that it might be the best sequel of all time. And I think it's worth viewing from the male loneliness standpoint that gets discussed often, but I think I find the most value here in the discussion around what it means to be human, continuing the theme of the original.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Yeah, that opening's pretty amazing. I definitely enjoyed The Godfather, but Goodfellas was the gangster movie that really nabbed me. Everything from the iconic performances, particularly from Joe Pesci, to the way it's shot, the constant humour, and just the electric pace of the story, I was locked in from beginning to end. In my opinion, and this is saying something, it's Scorsese's best work. I love the Coen brothers, but I can't believe I found a movie of theirs I like more than No Country for Old Men. That being said, I think A Serious Man is their best work. It's uproariously funny, from the ridiculous prologue all the way to the end, and the discussion around the meaning of life and the actions we take and how little we actually know about any of the mysteries of the universe is so relatable. On a much heavier note, Manchester by the Sea, while I didn't know much about it going in, I just heard it would make me cry. And it didn't, but it did make me feel this heaviness in my chest that I've never experienced before or since when watching a movie. To put it succinctly, Casey Affleck gives probably the greatest performance I've ever seen by an actor, and every single moment had me absolutely glued to the screen. So, Annihilation is my favourite movie that I watched last year, and it's pretty close to being perfect. On the surface we get the otherworldly sci-fi story, equal parts creepy and engaging and tight, and underneath we get this penetrating and really grounded story about how we interact and recover from either destructive actions or traumatic events. I mean, the soundtrack is off the charts good, and if there's a more visually breathtaking movie out there, I'd love to hear about it. So, does that mean I think Annihilation is the best movie of all time? Nah, nothing's ever going to beat this.
Try to stay